question was something about the role of the Shira.
And the realness of this everlasting, that really affected them in a big way. And it seemed like it was almost like a no-brainer. And even with the no-brainer, what bothers me about it? What bothers me is it's a very central role. KSY was something that didn't really last long in a lot of ways.
Okay.
I mean, even the Shiur is I mean, I didn't say this, but it's like almost Azia Shiur. It's a future thing. I don't know if it's for now, for later.
Okay, and you were asking about the schoolers in general.
Yeah, and that was Ryan's question. I'm not sure what essence of, we take the schoolers out of this week's Parsha, Parsha Saman, and Shabbat Shira, what is the relevance of these? But I was asking more on this, like what's the big chiddush that they sang? I mean, it's kind of an obvious reaction under the circumstances. We make a big thing out of it.
Okay, and then what did you add?
Zmanenu, children and fools, Azaychat and Nevuah.
All right.
And how is it, just like by Masharas of Shifta Bayam, how is that Pshutim are Zaychat to these Giluyim?
The great Maggid, the successor to the Baal Shem Tov, before Tekiyah Shefer, gave, I don't know if he did this annually or he just did it once, but he gave a mashal that there was an advisor to the king who was very devoted to the king, and the king had a great deal of love and respect for this particular advisor, and there were those who were extremely jealous of the relationship that this person had with the king, and they conspired against him, managed to somehow accuse him of some very serious crime which the king could not disprove or ignore, and he was forced to order him to be incarcerated indefinitely. But the enemies of this advisor, who knew that were he to have an opportunity to actually talk to the king, that he would be able to explain away the circumstances of which they accused him, and that the king would see the truth of his defense and would immediately would free him and acquit him. So they also worked it out so that nobody was allowed to visit this beloved advisor in jail, because they knew if anybody would visit him that he would send a message to the king and would be able to begin to set up his freedom. So they had watchmen, and anybody of any merit that wanted to approach the king, that wanted to approach the prisoner, they would not allow any contact. So on one occasion there was a beggar. He was, everything about him spoke about how destitute he was, his clothes, and he wasn't shaven, and he was dirty, and he walked by the prison, and this prisoner motioned to him to come up to him. the watchman felt very, very safe. This person could come up to them because this beggar would never be allowed to see the king. So they didn't mind if he spoke to the prisoner. So they allowed him to come up to the bars of the village. And meanwhile, the prisoner was able, because he knew what he knew what to tell the beggar and tell him how he could have access to the king. And consequently, that was what began to set the tone for his freedom, because nobody would imagine that the king would entertain any kind of an audience with such a lowlife, someone who was so inappropriate for the king. So the Maggid said, all the koiches of the Sitra Achra, all the representatives of the dark side, they want to let any kind of seniguri, any kind of a defense get through to the Ribboni Shalom. It's Rosh Hashanah, and they want to get the most the harshest judgment possible against Klal Yisrael. So they're not letting anybody through. He said, but he says, somebody like me, he says, I'm like, this, they look at me and they see this, they see this person who's not shaven and who's dirty, and he's like, they don't imagine that I'll be able to get through to the king. So he says, so that's why I'm worthy of blowing the shofar. He said, that's why I'm worthy of blowing the shofar, because they'll for sure, the Sultan for sure won't imagine that I'll ever get through to the king. That's what he said before at KSY, and that's how he went to KSY. This thing about setting a tone for Tekiah Shefa, I just saw this past week. Who showed it to me? So one of them Spelman showed it to me. Oh, one of Rabbi Haber's sons, but I had heard this some years ago. It's a magnificent story. I'm having a senior moment. One of the big Kanoim tzaddikim before the war, which Rebbe? He's Hungarian Rebbe. What?
No, Hungarian.
Who? No. Hungarian Rebbe. He was there. He and the Belzerov were not in good terms. He's got a big Bismillah on 15th Avenue, I think. Wherever they have minyanim all the time there. No. Thanks a lot. No.
15th Avenue?
Yeah, the Darki Chuvas, huh? The Darki Chuvas son. Keep going. Munkach.
Oh, that's 14th Avenue.
Sorry.
He's close.
The Munkacher Rebbe. The Munkacher Rebbe. Minkach. Okay, sorry about that. Minkach. The Munkacher Rebbe had only one child. He had a daughter. His daughter married This Rebbe Rabinovitz was considered the biggest Ilui Talmud Chacham in all of Poland. He was off the charts. And he became the son-in-law of the Minkatcher Rebbe, and eventually he went to Brazil after the war, and I mean he went through the war, he went through the horrors of the war, and then he went to Brazil. He was a Rov in Brazil, and then he eventually ended up in Chalon. They called him Chalon Rov. Anyway, he was supposed to have been a successor to the Minchas Elazar, to the Minkatcher Rebbe, but he and the Chassidim didn't get along. An interesting pastor. Anyway, so the Minkatcher Rebbe, the Minchas Elazar, had one daughter, and her oldest child was Nosson Tzvi, I believe was his name. And the Minkatcher Rebbe, this Minchas Elazar, was crazy about this little kid. He would go in every day to play with him, and this little kid was crazy about his Zayda. So came Chodesh Elul. So Minchas Elazar, on the way to shul, would stop in and he would blow shofar, and this kid loved the shofar. This Nosson Tzvi loved the shofar. So every day, on the way back from the davening, he would stop in, he'd blow the shofar, and this kid was so eager for his grandfather to come blow the shofar, and came Erev Rosh Hashanah. His grandfather came in to play with him, and he said to him, Zaidi, blow the shofar. So he said to him, Nosson Tzvi, I can't blow the shofar today. It's Erev Yom Tov, I'm not supposed to blow the shofar. Zaidi, blow the shofar. Anyway, and he pleaded with the kid, and the kid refused to be with him. He finally threw himself on the floor and was screaming and carrying on. Zaidi, blow the shofar. And so Elazar couldn't take it anymore, and he blew the shofar. The next day, before the KSY, the Minchas Elazar came into Shil. He came back into the Beshalach, and he opened up the Aron Kodesh. And he said, Tata. He said, Chatasi. I did an Avera. Yesterday I did an Avera. I blew shofar yesterday. Shulchan Aruch says you're not supposed to blow shofar. He said, I did an Avera. He said, you know why I did an Avera? He said, because my Einikol Nosson Tzvi was in such pain that I didn't blow shofar. I couldn't take it. I couldn't take it. He threw himself on the floor. I couldn't take it. He said, so I blew the shofar. So he said, Tata, he said to Rabbi Michel, he said, Klal Yisrael is on the floor. And they're crying and they're screaming and they're carrying on. How can you tolerate their screams? Tata, blow the shofar. Blow the shofar. They said that it took hours before they were able to start Musaf. That the Kehillah was in such a state, they wept for hours after Tata blew the shofar. How can you tolerate our pain? Your Klal Yisrael was on the floor, crying. Anyway, so there is this problem. There is a problem about the fact that our relationship with the Rabbeinu Shalom is not simple. It's an embattled relationship. There's part of our relationship which transcends logic. It's all about the Rabbeinu Shalom's love for us, which has no rhyme or reason to it. It's the connection. We are of Him. We're an extension of Him. We're al-chelik elikam imal. We are His children. And you love a child. Doesn't matter. Sometimes children are very challenging. Sometimes they cause us a lot of pain. And sometimes children do things that are unacceptable. They're children. And we've seen how that connection surpasses and transcends all logic, all reason, all boundaries. It's just... So, our relationship with Rabbi Michel is so is so unique and so special that the dark side, the kingdom of evil, is threatened by it. And it's not in the interests of the design of evil that Klal Yisrael's relationship should go unobstructed. So there's always kitrugim, there's always prosecution, there's always objections. They're not worthy. They're halalu, there's always these problems with it. So once the Churban took place, the connection between the Rabbeinu Shalom's, in a certain sense, his transmission of information to Klal Yisrael is a matter of concern to the legions of evil, and as such, it's obstructed. To fools and to children, it's like the Maggid said, the powers of evil feel safe. Yeah, let it go. It can go to the children, it can go to the fools. Nobody's listening. So that's kind of why Nevuah belongs to Shaitim and to the children. So sometimes you got to listen to fools and then you got to listen to children. One of my favorite stories is about the village fool. He was an idiot, and of course, like most idiots, he believed he was smart. So he and the townspeople had an ongoing argument. They would tell him that he was an idiot, and he would say, I'm like the smartest guy in town. So on one occasion, the Shaita was present at the Rebbe's Shiur, and he heard the Rebbe darshan, Shema Pesoim Hashem. Hashem watches over the fools. So a little light went on in his foolish head, and he said, I'm going to show them now who's right. So he said, the townspeople, follow me. They followed him. He climbed up to the second story roof, and he said to them, I'm going to jump off. Now, if I'm right and I'm a chacham, then I'm going to get hurt. But if you're right and I'm a fool, then Shem of Shem Hashem, nothing will happen to me. So it's you have now a way of testing this hypothesis. So he jumped off, and he was nearly got killed. So they ran over to pick him up. He said, I know I was smart. I didn't realize I was so smart. I'm saying I didn't watch over him at all. He was really smart. We have the Torah is called the Shira. And most especially Parshas Hazino, which follows that. That's the Shira Hazino. And it doesn't sound like a Shira. It has all kinds of very ominous things to say. It ends up, the end of the story is good, but it's a very, very troubling, very painful, very anguishing shira, but it's a shira. And one of the things that distinguishes a shira is, I believe there's a certain kinship between the word shira and the Hebrew word for a necklace, is that it's not only that you sing a song, a triumphant song, for the end, but it's also a triumphant song which appreciates all of the, all of the links in the chain. What? Sharsharos, right. Good. Sharsharos and shir. So, shir, you want to do this? I don't know what this says here. I don't mind the vibrations, but it's. And Shabbos, I have, like people, Leilena, who have an amputation, they have what they call phantom limb. Even though they no longer have that particular limb. I have a phantom cell phone. On Shabbos, it vibrates. And I'm thinking to myself, who's calling me on Shabbos? I don't have the phone, but it's
You don't answer. A lot of people have that.
What?
A lot of people have that.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I just all of a sudden, like, I feel this vibration. I'm thinking, chutzpah, they calling me on Shabbos. Anyway, so the shira is a recognition that that everything that led up to this was meaningful, was important, and that it wasn't just arbitrary, it wasn't aimless, it wasn't happenstance. That there's a logic to what transpired over here, and for that reason, the victory or the triumph at the end is so much more meaningful, because it's not just like the other things weren't meaningful, so the triumph isn't meaningful. But if everything is linked together, then then it's resplendent, it's glorious. So the shira of going through the sea was a shira that took into account the whole thing from the bris bein absorim and mechiras Yosef and the coming down of the brothers. It was the whole. Even they didn't know, it doesn't mention it, but that's the nature of the shira. The shira is something that carries with it a connection from.
Connects the dots.
Huh?
Connects all the dots.
Connects all the dots. And for that reason, when you look into the Sefer Torah, the way it's written, the shira is written, Ariach Agabi Levena. It's written. It's like bricks. You have on either side you have writing. The middle is blank, and then underneath the blank there's writing, and the two sides are. It's like you're putting bricks on top of each other. It's called Ariach Agabi, and that's what the Gemara says. It's a certain kind of brick on top of a different kind of a brick. And that's because the shira, when you look at the shira, you see a binyan. You see something that's been building from the bottom to its culmination. The intention of the shira is that it should escort us through history, and that somehow, the word uz, which is the starting word, so the starting letter, so you have aleph and zayin. The zayin represents that number that's associated with binyan. The world was built in 7 days. Everything is the number that's associated with binyan is 7. So in a certain sense, our challenge is to connect the Aleph, to be able to take the Rabbi Shalom, who is the Aleph of everything, and to connect it to nature. Nature is the binyan of the world conceals the Rabbi Shalom, but our obligation is to be able to make Uz, to connect the Aleph and to be able to live the Uz, to live in a world which is a world that seems to conceal Hashem and nonetheless for us to connect it to Hashem in such a way that we live in that Uz, we live in that. And if we live in the Uz, then we're capable of Shira. We're capable of, all of us have challenges. Some of them are gargantuan, some of them are lesser, but we all have challenges. And even though we're not at the place where we're on the other side of the sea, many of us are still standing on the shore, and we're and trying to figure out how we're supposed to get to the other side of the sea. But there's an assurance in the Shira that we're capable of walking through the most formidable challenges, that we're capable of finally liberating ourselves from any connection at all to what has subordinated us, what has enslaved us, what has limited us in the past, that we can free ourselves. The Shira is a statement of if I'm capable of living the Uz, I can get to the other end. I can get to the Yashir and connect the dots, and at the end be grateful for even the things that were so painful. So the Shira is, in a certain sense, is everybody's experience, everybody's challenge, and everybody's opportunity to deal with what faces us and to march through it resolutely by connecting up with the Aleph and being able to exclaim that we live with the Uz. A little word about segulais. Again, some segulais are much more important than others. Someone who says the Parsha Samon, it's supposed to be a segula for Parnasa, and especially if you say it a week of Parshas Beshalach on Tuesday, right? Tuesday. So you say Parsha Samon, it's supposed to be a segula for Parnasa a whole year. If it's done very superficially and someone is just saying it and not getting into it, it's probably very limited. The idea is to say the Parsha Samon is in a certain sense to ingest the Parsha Samon. Parsha Samon says that the Rabbi Shalom cares for Klal Yisrael, and according to many Sfarim, the man is still falling today. We're just not. We're just not. We don't believe enough to see it, and consequently we don't experience it. But idea is reading the Parsha Samon to know that the Rabbi Shalom takes care of us, and that the man is still available to us. So it's a little bit like somebody wants to take the subway, or I don't know what it is over here, but so you go to the train, and then you need a token to put in the token to be able to get through the turnstile to be able to take the train. So some people go to the turnstile and then they remember that they don't have a token. They have to figure out how to have a token. So for those people, it's a small matter to get the token. The token is the skula. But for some people who stay at home and they have the token and they don't go to the train station, all they have is the token. They never get on the train. You have the skula, but you're nowhere near the train. So a skula is really only works when you get the message of the skula. There are some skulas, like in Parshas, like Teres, who is always saying that Teres is supposed to be a skula for Panosa. There's all kinds of skulas, but some of them are. There was this avowed atheist who was being interviewed by a reporter, and he came in and he noticed that there was a horseshoe over the door. He said to him, "Why do you have this horseshoe?" He said, "Because it's good luck." He said to him, "Dr. So-and-so, you're Professor So-and-so, you're one of the most world-acclaimed dentists. You're sure you don't believe in the fact that a horseshoe brings good luck?" He said, "No, I don't believe it." He said, "But it brings good luck anyway." So some schools, I don't know if you believe it or don't believe it, they
What's the nimshal of getting on the train by Parnasa?
if you do read the Parsha Saman and you believe in the fact, I mean, you genuinely invested in the fact that the Rebbeinu Shalom has not abandoned us, even as individuals, that there is Parnasa for us, and that we have our Ishtadlus has to be reasonable, then the skula works. Then we're on the train, and we have the token. But if somebody just says it and doesn't believe in it, and doesn't invest in it, so he has a token, but he's sitting in his living room, there's no train in his living room.
So it seems like schools might be, like on Tuesday, there's more of a possibility that this will work.
Right.
Or whatever it is before it gives you there's windows.
Right.
So if you did it on Monday, it might not work as well.
But doesn't the rabbi give a shiur today?
No, Sunday and Thursday.
Navi Shiur now.
Huh?
I have a
That'd
shoftim.
be sure, yeah. What's it, Eli, his name is Eli Har?
Eli Bahar.
Bahar.